What runs through the gamut of accusations by the defendant are references to the plaintiff as a criminal, murderer, evil person, thief, a cheat, fraudster, extortionist, blackmailer, corrupt, land grabber, tax evader, bribe giver, bribe taker, interferer in the administration of justice, terrorizes people, email hacker, among others. The failure of the defendant to plead and provide evidence on those matters only meant that the words were admitted by him, sub silentio, as having been uttered by him, that they were uttered in reference to plaintiff and that they were published. Here is a portion of the controversial judgments that has gotten the attention of many and is being discussed all over the country and perhaps beyond. There are those that are in jubilation that the so-called, as described by the judge, investigative terrorist Anas has been silenced. But there are those who are livid and use some unprintable words at the judge, and some have used this judgment to begin to question the judicial system. They say their faith in that system has been hit really bad. Is it fair? And what is right or wrong about the judgments? What does it say about investigative journalism, and what does it do to investigative journalism? I have a lawyer who is in support of the judgment absolutely, completely, totally. I have a lawyer and from the CSOs who is against the judgment absolutely, completely, totally. I have a trainer of journalists presently training many investigative journalists who is against Anas and his methods, but has different views on this judgment. I have a lawyer, again, whose views I do not know as far as the judgment is concerned. Gideon Loins will take you through the judgment of the courts dismissing Anas Aramiyao Anas's case against the MP. But we start with matters regarding the gold for oil policy. The Vice President says it will save this country millions of dollars. There is opposition that suggests the contrary, that this will worsen Ghana's debt burden. And then road tolls are supposed to be back. The opposition has some demands. If it must be back, e-levy should go, because it was sacrificed to encourage e-levy's passage. We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. I'm Samson, Lardy, Anyenini, and this is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. Welcome back. I've got a very brief take for you. I title it State-Sponsored Terrorism Against Rule of Law. A Shaiman, State-Sponsored Terrorism Against Rule of Law. As we know, and more particularly lawyers, when we say a democracy is a democracy of the rule of law, what we mean is very simple, and it is found in the Constitution of Ghana. That all are equal in essence before the law, and that if someone does wrong or is suspected of doing wrong, they will not be shot, they will not be beaten, but they will be arrested. When they are arrested, the Constitution commands in Article 14 that they should be told in a language that they understand, because they are human beings, they are not animals. And because the people arresting them are humans and not animals, whilst effecting the arrest, they must tell them in a language that they understand why they are being arrested, the reason for which they are being arrested. And they must in addition tell them that they have a right to be silent, or anything that they say during that process could be used against them in a court of law. The Constitution commands further that they ought to be told of their right to a lawyer of their choice, because the processes that they are going to go through once they are arrested, they are legal, and not everybody is trained as a lawyer. So the reason they are lawyers is that they should help in such processes. Now, our same law, the Constitution, which is the ultimate, the supreme law of the land, says all persons are presumed innocent if you are suspected of anything, or even where you have been charged. You've been arrested and you have been charged for a crime. The law says you are presumed to be innocent until and unless a court, not a soldier, not a police officer, not even the president, determines that you are guilty, or you yourself, once you appear before the court, you admit and confess that you are guilty. Even that, if it's a case of murder, you will say you are guilty, but the law requires that mandatorily you should not be pronounced guilty and sentenced, convicted and sentenced, but you must be given a lawyer if you don't have one by the state. So you go through the process and the matter is determined on its merit before you are convicted and sentenced. This is what Ghana has given itself. And this is why we are called a democracy. When the military begin on suspicion to go to a town, to go to Tulaku, to go to Ashaiman, to pick people at random, stop cars on the road, move people out of them, hit and whip them. They have blood all over them. They have bruises all over them. That is not a democracy. And those presiding over the helm, the realm, if they want the Committee of Nations and the world to take Ghana serious, they must speak up. They must denounce this dastardly, unthinkable conduct where human beings are treated like animals because they are suspected of killing a soldier. It must never happen that any citizen will lift their finger on anybody, not even people in uniform, not on anybody. But when such things do happen, Due process must be allowed. Let the police go in and do just as they have done. They have their excesses, but see the professionalism by which they went through this process. You picked almost 200 people, whipped them, brutalized them. You have released all of them, meaning none is guilty of what you claimed. Our laws say we prefer that even a person charged with a criminal offense, in the circumstance where we are not sure, it is better that 100 guilty persons should escape than one innocent person should suffer. This morning, I joined Occupy Ghana, I joined the CDD Ghana to ask that all those officers who were involved in this act must be brought to book. All those at the helm, high command, must be brought to book if they are not resigning yet. And the president must tell the world where he stands. The people must be compensated sufficiently, and if possible, not by using state funds, because what happened is unlawful. That's my take. Thank you very much. Now, let me introduce my guest as we begin to get into the matters that we are discussing this morning. My guests this morning are Andrew Ejapa-Mensah, he's MP, 2nd D and Deputy Minister for Energy. Dr. Theo Champong is economist and political risk analyst. Godwin Eduji Tameklo is legal and communications team member of the National Democratic Congress. And as I told you, just hang in there. Don't move anywhere, because I have a team that will digest the judgments of the court that pronounces Anas Arameyao Anas an investigative terrorist. And we'll ask the question, is it fair that some people in the public, as you check on Twitter, on social media, how we're using this case to bastardize the judiciary? Is it fair? And the celebration by those who are celebrating, should it continue? And what is the purpose of that? So, this program, as always, is brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN, everywhere you go, Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa, Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on MTN to join. Duraplus, how you get your water matters. Remember, where Duraplus goes, water flows. DBS Industries, roofing Papa Fie, and Rehoboth Social Housing. Your housing dreams become reality. We'll be right back.
Next week, we are likely to see fuel prices fall again as a result of this policy. Next week, it's not actually, Professor has just said, it's not that far, it's tomorrow. Tomorrow we will see the decline in prices that we are expecting. I mean, this is remarkable. 2.5 months ago, you were at 23 cedis per liter. Today, you are at 12 cedis and falling. That is a good point. But let me note that, let me point out that the most important aspect of the gold for oil policy is not just the reduction in fuel price, but the most important aspect is the savings in foreign exchange that the Bank of Ghana will make as a result of the lower demand for forex to import oil. That saving is huge. We are currently importing about 50 to 60% of oil imports under this policy. The goal is to move to 100%, and that will be done this year. We will see this done with, and we'll work with the BDCs to make this happen. But the savings in foreign exchange, when we do this, will be an annual saving of around $4.8 billion US dollars every year when we get this done.
In fact, Mr. Speaker, what we must be careful is this, and people should listen to what is happening. This is a scheme that if we are not careful, we are going to really create a huge debt. Mr. Speaker, there are two players in this game. One, there are two government important institutions. The Bank of Ghana, who is in charge of getting the dollars. Dollars has always been a problem for people who import crude oil. So the Bank of Ghana says, okay, from now on, anybody who wants to import, come and get the dollars. We'll ring fence the dollars. That's the Bank of Ghana. So guess what? The Bank of Ghana now decides that the bulk distribution companies, I'll line you up and I'll give you good rates. So that's the Bank of Ghana. What is happening is that the Bank of Ghana is not only giving them dollars and then they pay you for it. The Bank of Ghana is now becoming the bank to finance the importation of these petroleum products, exposing, giving a risk all the government institutions that have guaranteed crude oil to this country, whether it's GMPC, they've created huge debt. They've created huge debt. GMPC, they've created huge debt. Now, the Bank of Ghana is guaranteeing. So you tell me, boss, are you saying that boss is the one? Don't talk to him, just boss, where does boss get the money to import the crude oil?
Right, so as you know, we are in trouble as our economy, and we're hoping that the IMF will come to our rescue. That deal is not sealed yet, and there are one or two economies that have faced similar situations where we have seen fuel has become the major situation that grinds economic activity to a halt. This is what this country is trying to avoid at all costs, that we should not find ourselves in a circumstance where we don't have fuel, so people can go and do what they must do and the economy to completely, as it were, collapse. So the government introduced what it called the Gold for Oil program. What is it? We'll get some explanation on that. Bawumia says it is saving the country $4.8 billion US dollars. $4.8 billion US dollars. That's what it will save us each year. The opposition has some concerns that it will rather worsen our current situation, for which we are before the IMF cap in hand. Right. So let's start with this. And Ejapa Mesa, who is the Deputy Minister for the Energy area, will help us to appreciate, first of all, what this goal for energy policy is. What is it? Good morning.
It's been a while.
That's
I haven't been on your show for quite some time. And let me say good morning to my good friend Eduji and our cherished viewers and listeners. Indeed, as the Vice President explained a couple of days ago, the gold for oil policy is really very simple. We, as a government, realized that owing to especially the Russian-Ukraine invasion, supply chain challenges had evolved that then had led to some countries experiencing shortages of petroleum products. Of course, our own peculiar economic situation where forex availability was becoming a challenge for the Bank of Ghana. Import cover was dwindling, and so then the demand for dollar to import petroleum products then led to a spiraling, in the depreciation of the cedi, especially because the BDCs forward price. Okay, by forward price, what it only means is that if they import a commodity today at, say, 10 cedis to the dollar, because there's a window within which they sell and re-import, they want to assure themselves that by the time they sell the commodity, they would be able to generate sufficient enough to buy the same dollar to replace their stocks. And so rather than selling it for 10, they will sell it for 15 Ghana cedis. Bank of Ghana is not meeting the demand, so at a point, they were forward pricing the petroleum product at 19 cedis to the dollar, just so that they can go and buy the commodity when it runs out. That 19 cedis to the dollar is what you and I pay, which then led to petroleum prices rising as high as 23, 24 cedis per liter. And so it became important for government to rethink how we then find ways of intervening to ensure that, especially because the data showed that out of the two components that determine the petroleum pricing, which is the FOB price and the forex impact, the forex impact had a greater percentage in terms of impact on the price than the FOB increases at the global market. And so if you had a policy that then ensured that the forex was stable or reduced to the levels that are accommodating, then you have an impact on the price. And so we began the conversation called stakeholders to find a way to ensure that we were not going to go through the kinds of challenges that other countries, Nigeria and other places, Kenya, even UK, were encountering with respect to queues at the pumps. And that then led to us evolving this policy of gold for oil, which purely is that Bank of Ghana aggregates gold here in country by buying from small, medium scale operators who ordinarily would have exported, and if all things were working well, would have repatriated the funds into Ghana to support our import bill. But that fund in itself was not coming. And so aggregating the gold here, paying for it in cedi, and externalizing it to then either swap or sell the gold to fund the petroleum imports would help in reducing the demand that ordinarily BDCs would be having for dollar, at least to the extent that the gold for oil program was providing.
Small scale
yes,
gold miners
yes,
get their gold.
Yes.
They would have sold it abroad.
Well, they have people who buy the gold and export.
That's correct.
Yes.
Now, the government says, you have a buyer in us. Sell it to the Bank of Ghana.
PMMC.
Great.
Yeah.
So you sell it to the Bank of Ghana, so to speak.
Yes.
And then you use that gold.
Yes.
Or you sell that gold.
Yes.
To get the currency to buy the oil.
Precisely.
The problems that are raised, you are actually, from what you are saying, you are solving two problems.
Yes.
Making sure we have oil, we don't run short of it, and at a price that is reasonable. And two, by doing so, you are also holding up the cedi, so it doesn't depreciate, and our economy gets even worse.
So really, what causes the cedi depreciation? It's a function of demand and supply. And so if BDCs require $400 million per month, and Bank of Ghana is unable to provide them that $400 million, they will have to look for it elsewhere, and that demand creates the depreciation. And so if you're able to take 200 million, okay, of that demand out of the forex market, then you reduce the pressure. And so that then reduces the demand for the dollar, which then impacts the exchange rate. So
when the vice president really says it's going to save us 4.8 billion.
Yes.
That's far in excess of what we are going to the IMF for. We're going to IMF for only 3 billion. What does it mean? How exactly are we making these savings?
So if you listen to the tape that you played, he clearly is saying that the objective is to do 100% of our petroleum product importation through the program, and that we're going to work with the BDCs to ensure that we achieve that. Now, if we achieve the 100% importation through the Gold for Oil program, what it then means is that the demand for dollar of 400 per month by 12, which takes us to 4.8 billion, would not be available anymore.
Okay. Just hold it there briefly.
Sure.
Dr. Theo Champon, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, good morning, and it's good to see Ejapa and my friend Eduji.
It's raining in Accra this morning, but it's not as cold as where you are. Tell us what you make of this policy. What's good about it? Is there anything bad about it?
I think there's a lot of good, and then there are some challenges as well with the policy. My idea here is to make suggestions that would improve the policy. Like Ejapa was saying, the idea behind the Gold for Oil is not a bad one, right? And the reason, which is actually explained, is we have an oil import bill of $4.7 billion. This was as of last year by the data by the Bank of Ghana shows. This $4.7 billion is about 32% of our total import bill. And it's almost as much as we earn, twice as much as we actually earned from cocoa exports at the same time. And if you translate that number down into monthly, Japan said 400, but yes, it's right. It's just about $390 million every month that you need to go and find to be able to support or bring these petroleum products into the market. So the attempt then by the government is that, okay, we want to do two things. The first thing is we want to reduce the pressure on the foreign reserves of the country. And as we speak currently, we know our reserves have significantly dwindled to under 3 months of import cover. Then the second objective is that they want to, according to them, procure these petroleum products at competitive prices, and thereby any savings that are made because of the forex dimension of it would be passed to consumers at the pump. So overall, the objective is quite clear, and you can see the policy intent behind it. But the devil is always in the details, and that's where sometimes some of us come in.
Let's poke his eye.
we offer suggestions in terms of how you can then sort of improve it. So currently, on the FX dimension, we know that they have purchased just about 5 tons of gold, right, so far. And gold is now selling for about $60,000 per kilo. So roughly, you would say we've been able to raise about $300 million through these gold purchases from the small-scale miners. And I'm also being told that we've spent about $200 million or so far on these or supporting these purchases. So roughly about $100 million per month is what has been spent to support the oil, right, purchase. So if you assume that you have a demand of 400 for argument's sake, and then you're now having to save about $100 million out of that, then that's $100 million of forex that otherwise would have been demanded from the Bank of Ghana or from the commercial market, which now is available to support your reserve. So that's quite a positive in a sense. But where the issue gets a bit tricky is that for a very long time, the BDCs have also said, well, give us a preferential rate, and we can still bring these products into the market at a competitive price. That hasn't happened. And then number two, the government also says, like I said, the second policy objective is to bring down price at the pump, right? As we speak currently, in the recent pricing window, the gold for oil products that came in are actually selling slightly higher than products that are on the market that the normal BDCs who are not participating in this policy program are doing. And there are a couple of news reports out there. Ejapa can speak to this and correct it if that is not the case. But if you look at the numbers that are out there, petrol, for example, and our good for oil is selling for about 9.6 cedis a liter. And from the non-good for oil sources, right, your normal BDCs, they are selling it at about 9.1 cedis per liter. So you go almost like a 50 peso difference. You have similar thing with diesel as well. So when the government now comes and claims that, oh, because of good for oil, the price has, dropped from 20 something to about 10 or so, 13 or so cedis. Clearly, that cannot be the case, because what is driving the price at the local level, which is a function of the international price, and crude oil prices have actually come down a bit. It's a function of the exchange rate. We've seen the exchange rate stabilize relatively. It cannot be the case that all of the drop that we're seeing is fully attributable to this gold for oil policy. So I think a bit of the communication and the PR, which is seeking to make the government look as though it's really because of this policy that prices have dropped, that is not fully the case. And then there are other issues that we need to also, for me, highlight.
Yes,
right?
but is it correct to say that in this attempt, which succeeds in reducing the demand for dollars for oil importation, we are saving $4.8 billion?
We would potentially save 4.8 billion. We are not saving.
Are you reducing your importation, or you are saving something? What is it you are saving?
Okay, so I said that we are spending $4.9 billion, right, every year to import petroleum products into the country. Before or hitherto, what you have to do is the BDCs who bring these things have to go to Bank of Ghana or go to the commercial banks to find the dollar to go and bring these products in, right? Now, what the government is saying is that we can, through either a barter or government-to-government arrangement, more or less use gold to pay for that dollar, or to settle the dollar which you need to bring the petroleum products into the market.
Yes, so you are reducing the demand for dollar for the importation.
Yes, and therefore the demand that you need for your that you would have needed from Bank of Ghana, right? That pressure for dollars don't necessarily exist. But the point is that we are not going to cut 4.8, 4.7 billion like the vice president is saying. It's not happened yet.
Yes.
That is potentially, if you did or roll out all of this policy 100%, then yes, that could happen. But it hasn't happened yet.
Okay, thank you very much. Please hold it there for me.
What the vice president said.
Okay.
That the successful implementation of the program will lead to us saving 4.8 billion. So, yes, no suggestion has been made that in fact that saving has occurred as at the day.
No, but my question is different.
How so?
The fact that you are reducing demand for dollars for the importation, does that mean you are making a savings, or you are saving something?
Well, in context, okay, and of course, I mean, if you have a certain demand for dollars, and this policy then takes away that demand, clearly, Bank of Ghana wouldn't, or the government of Ghana, for that matter, would not have to have the need for that dollar to enable you,
so,
run the economy.
Right. Eduji, as I heard your ranking, Jinapo, say, among other things, there are problems with this system. He says, among other things, that this approach to solving the constant fuel price hikes, he says that will rather worsen the government's unsustainable debt burden. The gold being used for the deal ought to be valued in dollar terms as a function of currency, as it is done for oil. He says, quote, "This is a lazy man's approach because gold, first of all, needs to be expressed in its monetary value. You can't just say, take an ounce of gold and give me a barrel of oil as it used to be in the real butter that you are talking about. You must first of all value that gold in dollar terms, and that is the function of currency or money. I'm not a prophet of doom, but from all the documents I have read, we are heading for a debt crisis out of this so-called gold for oil." I don't get his point. Help me. And they are bringing in BDCs that have issues.
I think that, so good morning to you and our viewers and our listeners. I think that the fear of the minority, first of all, has a certain historical basis. You know, our vice president has this penchant of engaging in rash talk. And this rash talk, with the benefit of time, had rather exposed the fact that our vice president is really not thorough when it comes to policy issues. Why am I saying this? If you recall, there was a time our vice president gave an indication why government of Ghana was going to reduce benchmark value. Because for him, revenue from the port is a function of total volume of import times how much you are basically charging by way of duties. And so took the view that if the benchmark value reduces, automatically there will be an increase in volume, which would translate in greater revenue for government. It turned out that that so-called reduction in benchmark value could not be sustained. So government had to do a U-turn and now go back to the very position. Second, we're here in this country when the vice president said he was bringing another novelty here, Sino-Hydro. You recall? And we told him that, listen, Sino-Hydro, from the document and the framework agreement that we have seen, it is not what you are projecting. In fact, it's a loan. So come forth. Let's know how this is going to impact on our overall public debt portfolio. He said NDC members do not read. Today, as we speak, by June, the Sino-Hydro transaction comes to an end. We are yet to process even one ton of bauxite, create an escrow account, use the money to offset whatever the Sino-Hydro. They have disbursed $600 million dollars. So that 600 million, instead of using your bauxite to pay for it, it has now become part of our public debt. Based on this conduct of the vice president, we are expressing a certain fear. First of all, the minority is simply saying that if you go or you get your gold, whether from Anglo Gold, whether from Newmont, or small-scale miners, there's a certain value for an ounce of gold. That particular value is expressed in dollar terms. So it can be $64,000 per an ounce of gold. Let's know how much we are getting. Assuming we're selling that particular gold, we would have gotten this. This amount will buy us so and so metric tons of, either gasoline or oil. Then we know that we're actually dealing with a barter arrangement whereupon we are doing value for value. But in this case, Samson, you recall that as we even speak today, we do not know how much gold have we gotten from these small-scale miners. In any case, Samson, anytime the Bank of Ghana get the proceeds from our gold purchases, they are supposed to come to the Bank of Ghana vault. Granted. So if we have this arrangement where this particular proceeds can come to the Bank of Ghana, why are we using, as it were, intermediaries? Because as we speak, Bank of Ghana had gone to employ the services of an intermediary, Alpha Stream. And they are using Alpha Stream for all these transactions. We are saying that no, we don't need it because we have always been doing, purchases of refined petrol. And look at the numbers, senior. Look at the numbers carefully. So far, we have been told that by reason of this gold for oil policy, right, we have had 3 cargoes so far. The first one came in January, 40,000 metric tons. Then somewhere in February, we had 2 additional cargoes, 35,000, 40,000. Total, this gold for oil thing had given us 115,000 metric tons so far. Within 2 months, our total demand or need for refined petroleum product is in the region of 600,000 metric tons. So when the vice president now comes to say that out of 600,000, the policy that had contributed only 115,000 is the reason for reduction in crude oil, petroleum pricing and others. We certainly have a challenge with that conversation because the available data does not suggest that. And we have made a point that, look, and again, I've read from Nova Reports Online, where Nova Report Online is telling us that the liter cost of a diesel and petrol for the OMC under this gold for oil policy is in the region of 10.10 pesos per liter. That's for diesel. And then 9.60 pesos for petrol. Now look at the OMC selling, which are not under this gold for oil. They are doing diesel for 9.50. They are doing petrol for 9.10 pesos. So you cannot, for all intent and purpose, say that the reason for the reduction in pricing as we see on the various OMC is as a result of this policy issue. You know, when my senior...
So that actually confirms what...
yes, and Nova Report has it. But you see, there's something that my senior says that there are 2 reasons for this gold for oil policy. Stability in the city, because they believe that it will result in relative stability in the city. First of all, let's get this clear.
Which it has.
No. You are not paying, you are not servicing your public debt, the greater part of it. You have defaulted in servicing. You are saving about $200 million that ordinarily you'll be using for the servicing of your public debt from December. You have defaulted.
So
ordinarily,
help me understand this.
Yes.
What is lost by this process, by this policy?
When we say so we are saying that they claim that this is a novelty. It is not.
No. What is lost by resort to this policy?
No. So I think we need to get a conversation first. When we say what is lost, we need to first know if we are ordinarily, just exporting our gold resources, how much would we have ordinarily made in dollar terms?
What is your estimation? For which, in comparative terms, gives us reason to ditch this policy and return to that?
First of all, this policy is in a very, very, early stages. But the vice president is speaking on projections that this is going to save us $400 million.
Yes, he's done his work. He's done his maths.
No, $4 billion in terms of
almost $5 billion.
Yes, and we are saying that the reason for the stability, even today, is not attributable to the fact that this, as we speak.
Are you able to say authoritatively in such, conclusive terms, because you don't know how much this is contributing to the stability?
No.
At least you should admit that
but
it will contribute to the stability.
No, what I've just told you.
Because if the demand reduces, the demand for gold, for importation reduces, it's automatic. It should not be a...
There's no data as we speak, because we cannot even tell the relative stability to the city. How much of it is coming from the fact that you are no longer servicing?
No, I thought it was a commonsensical consequence that you don't need to have data to even show.
No, you need
this
data.
Is what will,
you need data.
It will
so you see, even from the economics analysis point of view, what you do usually for an economy is to run a certain regression analysis and then determine the fact that you are no longer servicing your public debt or certain aspects of your public debt. How much of that savings Ordinarily, because if you are going to service your debt, what you need is that you need to use the dollar to service. Okay. Now you are not doing that. Right. So that's also a saving. So which one exactly is resulting
I'll come to you, sure. Mesa. Dr. Theo Champong, what do you make of the argument that is being reinforced by Eduji Temeklo this morning?
Yes, I was just actually going to make a quick remark on that. The issue is not the demand for the products or the oil products. It's going up and it will always go up. The issue is the availability of dollars to actually pay, right, for those products that you are bringing into the country. And under this policy, the proposal then is for somebody to buy your gold and give you dollars and you name it. But I think given the experiences we've had from Judy talks about Hydro. We've had a Japan, we've had other deals where you have similar brokerage swap arrangements that are shrouded in some form of secrecy, and there are all sorts of red flags around it. In my view, the easiest thing to do, if really is an issue of dollar availability, then let Bank of Ghana buy the gold from PMMC and by virtue the small mining players, and make those dollars available to the BDCs to support their importation. Thereby, you cut away this whole middleman, this whole, swap arrangement that we're not.
So you agree with Eduji about the middleman thing? That
there are question marks around that. I was going to come to that, but I didn't get the chance. There are question marks around even the role of BOST in all of this arrangement, and the likelihood of them not being able to repay for the products that they have gotten.
The question I asked him, you raised those issues, but the question I asked him, must you answer that? What is lost by this policy, for which we should not be interested in pursuing it?
In my view, what is lost is we've been doing 20 years of market deregulation. By pushing for this 100% arrangement, basically you're trying to cut out even the BDCs that are already within the market and people who support your petroleum products for a very long time now. Through a policy action, you are distorting the market. Number two, creating unfair advantage for certain players within the market. And in my view, this can be simplified. And it can be simplified by taking away the middleman who is doing this brokerage and the swap arrangement, by making sure that the dollars that you are buying or getting from the gold. So you buy the gold from the small scale producers, sell that gold for dollars and make those dollars available to
you have made that point. Okay.
To actually bring the products in. And that is far more simpler arrangement without the undue complexity.
Okay. What final point would you like to make? Because this is where we end. I come to him to end the discussion on this.
So I think on the governance arrangement, I'd like to hear a little bit more from the government of Japan. I mean, what went into the selection of the companies that are involved, right, in doing the brokerage and the streaming. The policy also makes BOST the off-taker of these products, and we know there are serious issues at BOST. There have been improvements under the current BOST, but I am a bit worried that if BOST is not able to actually repay for off-taking these products, then ultimately the money or the debt would end up sitting on the government books, and somebody's got to pay for it.
Okay. You had spoken about unfair competition, but from the narration that Eduji gave us, those who are not part of this policy, who are not benefiting from the BDCs, who are not benefiting from it, appear to have lower prices, correct?
That is so.
They appear to have lower prices than those who are benefiting. So where is the unfairness? They have an opportunity to drive the market.
Yeah, but if you're pushing for a policy that ultimately is, so there are two players. We're talking OMCs and then there's BDCs. These are two separate, players within the
If
chain.
government's own is not profitable, don't sign up. And from what Eduji just gave, and you admit, then government's own is not profitable. So let the private, participants stay where they are. Why should they complain that somebody is being favored against me?
No, but if you're pushing in on the BDC side, if you're pushing in to bring the products into the market using only a particular stream of conduits, then basically you end up taking away the job or the role of the BDCs within the market. That's one. Then we have the people that sell, the retailers, the OMCs, who actually end up going to buy from the BDCs to also sell the products on the market. And one of the claims that the government has made is that the policy is meant to bring down price at the pump. And we're seeing in this current pricing window that the current players who are not even playing or participating in this policy are selling even relatively cheaper or lower than the one that is under the gold for oil. Okay. So there are two slightly separate things.
All right.
But you see,
question is, why are you convoluting what should be a straightforward process and bring in a middleman that we will pay?
No, Samson, I'll deal with that. I mean, the suggestion that gold for oil prices are much more expensive than what the other BDCs are doing itself. It's not borne out by the facts.
How?
Yes, because I have the data here, the Platt average prices per pricing window. Okay, the window of January 21st, when the first commodity came in. Okay, PMS by the BDCs was 889.59 per metric ton. Gold for oil was 888.36.
Okay.
Okay, in the week of 2nd February window, PMS under the BDC's regime is 848.35. Under the gold for oil is 829.83. Okay, and then also the 1st March window, PMS under the existing regime is 829.73. Under gold for oil is 785.
Really?
Yes. Okay, 785.65. But you see, it's a margins game. Okay, there is a cap of within which the OMCs and the BDCs operate. Okay, and so if you want to remain competitive, you can reduce your margin, which is really the profit that you make on the product that you sell. So really, if you look at the numbers, it's not borne out by what the. But you see, I sometimes wonder really, and I appreciate the suggestions that is coming from.
Generally, Ghanaians have had concerns about when government wants to procure, government always is looking for a third party to use to procure.
It's not a question
government wants to buy cars. And the question is, your ministry wants to buy cars. Why don't you go to the market and buy? If a private company wanted to buy, it will go into the market to buy. But when government wants to buy, it needs somebody else who will stand in to connect to buy for them, and then they take money. That's the question.
If Bank of Ghana is conducting international operations, it works through third parties. It opens bank accounts, nostro accounts with foreign banks. It comes at a fee. Same way if other banks are dealing with Ghanaian banks or customers in Ghana, they go through intermediaries. So let's not make it sound as if engaging intermediaries in a transaction of this nature.
But in this case, from the explanation by both parties, it's unavoidable.
How is it avoidable? How is it avoidable? Bank of Ghana can sell the gold only through a third party. Which market is he going to sell it when he hasn't got a gold sales license, say in UAE, to sell the gold? How is he going to sell it? Okay, and so, look, we can ask as to how those brokers were engaged. Legitimate question. And I believe that Bank of Ghana can provide responses as to the due diligence and the procurement processes that they went through to engage that intermediary. Okay, and that's a fair question. But to relate this transaction to what you call a benchmark value and Sino-Hydro and all that, really are red herring.
Someone just sent me a message, but you have explained that margins game thing. Kweku Nchubo says that, look, along the Adenta Dodoa Road, Goil today is selling petrol at 12.95 cedis per liter, while Goodness Energy is selling at 12.25 cedis per liter.
Imagine.
Goil is one of the beneficiaries of the gold for oil, and yet is more expensive at the pump.
Exactly. Because that is the final, the ultimate.
You see, we need to look into that, okay? But like I said, every pricing window, NPA releases the guidelines based on which, because it's a deregulated market, people price their commodities within that space.
Senior,
all right.
I think you've given everybody a second.
It's unfortunate we don't have too much time.
I'll give you just a minute because we'll take a break and otherwise come to the road toll. Yeah.
Okay, so but Senior, just in a minute, there are key issues that we need to look at. The last time I had conversation with my senior, he tried to avoid that conversation by pushing it to Bank of Ghana. First of all, by what procurement method did we procure the services of Alpha Stream? Was it sole source?
He said that's a legitimate question you can ask.
No, but you see, each time he pushes it to the Bank of Ghana. The Ministry of Energy is part of this transaction. So you cannot feign that you do not know the processes by which Alpha Stream were procured. Two, which is more important, if Bank of Ghana today sells our gold, granted, what they'll get will be dollars. That dollar comes into their reserve. If the BDCs need it, all you do is that you sell it to them at a negotiated, reduced price. Then you stabilize. You kill speculation.
You see,
so if you can do this, why do you need?
It's interesting how all of a sudden everybody is talking about Bank of Ghana selling our gold. In fact, you have no gold.
No.
See, wait. Let's get it clear. Wait, please.
Let him answer that.
Please.
You're raising questions.
You have no gold. In June 2021, when Bank of Ghana realized that it was important to diversify its forex portfolio, that they started a gold purchase program. At the time, we had only 8 kilograms of gold. 8. That's what we owned as a country. That translated to 292 ounces. Okay, so if I hear people suggest that when Bank of Ghana is selling our gold, the impression that they want to create out there in the public domain is that some gold is sitting somewhere that somebody is using.
That's not correct.
But that's exactly what you said.
But we know that the premise is that this is gold for small scale miners.
Well, that you have licensed to extract and pay you royalties and taxes.
Okay.
The commodity itself belongs to them. But Bank of Ghana, then in its wisdom, is doing a gold purchase program that it is using part to support the importation of petroleum products.
All right.
What's so strange about that?
So because of the interjection, 30 seconds. You see, what my senior is...
For 30 seconds, he will ask for 15 seconds.
Yes.
That's why he does all the time.
What my senior is failing to acknowledge is the fact that the money PMMC is using to buy the gold from the small-scale miners, whether illegal or whatever, it's actually money coming from the Bank of Ghana. So the Bank of Ghana can in fact purchase
for value consideration.
Can in fact purchase this gold. So if BOG can purchase the gold and sell more directly, get the reserve. Get the money to show up our reserve.
Thank you very much. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. I've told you we will take a break, and when we return, we will quickly deal with the matter of the road toll that is being reintroduced. But don't go anywhere yet. It hurts, and I'm quoting Manasseh Azure Awene. He says, it hurts when judges are lumped together and tarred with the same brush of indignity and scorn. I'm not a judge, but it hurts because I have been in courtrooms and observed judges who deliver justice with such diligence, thoroughness, and professionalism that I could feel their pain when the action of a few judges drags all judges in the mud. One such instance is the toxic social media commentary about the judiciary in the wake of the judgment in the defamation case Anas Armiyaw Anas brought against the MP for Asen Central. He concludes, he does an incisive work and then concludes by saying that, I'll read this one to you. He says, The current judgment is a dent on the judiciary. The issues leading to this judgment, such as the defendant unilaterally petitioning and getting a judge of his choice, do not speak well of our justice system. And he displays the letters that were written by the defendant in the matter, seeking the Chief Justice and the approval for a particular judge. We'll explain what that is. He says it hurts the reputation of the hard-working and conscionable judges who are dispensing justice. If there is something this judgment has succeeded in doing, then it is the division of opinions between the pro-Anas and critical independent observers on one side and the anti-Anas forces who thinks it serves him right. The judge said Anas, what Anas does is, quote, investigative terrorism, end quote, and not investigative journalism. Having gone through the judgment, however, one won't be an inch away from the truth to conclude that what happened is judicial terrorism. We'll be right back, dissecting this judgment as far as the law permits. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis show. And here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. Soon, we shall go to the pro-Anas and the anti-Anas discussion in light of the judgments of Eric Ba, Justice of the Court of Appeal. And right now, as you know, there's a process to reintroduce road tolls. The road toll that was abolished is coming back, but there are questions being raised, particularly by the minority. The minority is saying that you ask us not to pay road toll so that we will enjoy some cushion to pay e-levy. So if you are bringing the road toll back, take the e-levy away. And then we know that you're a government that says this money is for this purpose, and we contribute money for the purpose, and you take part of the money to go and do all sorts of things. We need a firm assurance. Is assurance enough that if we agree and approve that there should be road toll, it will be used exactly for that purpose and not for any other purpose? Will the minority get what it is asking? And is that realistic in the first place? Let's hear the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta and Haruna Idrisu when this matter came up.
Our roads are being fixed. It is true that more roads have been fixed and are being fixed over the last 5 years than any relative period in the entire history of our nation. We even want to do a lot more, and this budget will cater for this. That is why for decades, governments after governments imposed and maintained tolls on some public roads to raise funds for road construction and maintenance. This is the situation in many countries. However, over the years, the tolling and impacted negatively on productivity. The congestion generated at the tolling points, besides creating these inconveniences, also leads to pollution in and around the vicinities. To address these challenges, government has abolished all tolls on public roads and bridges. This takes effect immediately. The budget is approved on appropriation. The toll collection personnel will be reassigned. The expected impact on productivity and reduce environmental pollution will more than offset the revenue foregone by removing the tolls.
On the matter of toll booths, We want it reinstated, and we demand that toll booths be made functional and the revenues accruing from it made available for the Republic. They have no business, as if when you have the mandate to govern, you can just do as you please. Nowhere in the world will you travel and you not see functional toll booths. The state have lost significant amount of money arising out of it. We think that it's only proper that is reintroduced and probably adjusted so that we can rake in the needed revenue and use it as a vehicle to promote public-private partnership in the development of our road infrastructure and other infrastructure needed.
Right, so Haruna Idrisu, long ago when this matter came up, and then the finance minister recently when he pointed out that this might be necessary. So as we understand, there is a process that is beginning to unfold in Parliament for this particular purpose. But is the opposition germane? Let me begin with you, Eduji, on this.
First of all, as you're aware, at the time when road tolls were so-called stopped or abolished, we raised certain fundamental issues. That one, the minister then ought to have allowed the amendment to the road toll, the act itself. That was not done. In the usual rush, the government, for PR purposes, said, oh, they had abolished it, and gave all kinds of reasons. Now, I've always asked, today that there's an attempt at this, we've read the memos, you want to reintroduce. The reason you gave for abolishing the tolls in the first place, have those reasons suddenly vanished? Because your claim then was that by reason of holding on to the tolls, it was creating traffic, among other things, in the various roads where the toll booths are situated. If you are going to reintroduce it today, is it going to abolish the traffic? Certainly no. And that is why I've always maintained, our friends are always in a rush. There's no deeper policy reasoning. The rigor in policy formulation is always lacking. Populism, and more of it. So we come back to square one. In any case, as at the time road tolls were being abolished, we have said the tolls were giving us annually 72 million Ghana cedis. And so when they came with the idea that e-levy was going to generate 3.6 billion Ghana cedis within the fiscal year, we said, okay, if we are going to abolish one and get 3.6, then let's go for it. So even at that time, the conversation had to do with, if you are going for e-levy and you are abolishing this one, then fair enough. But today we are back to the situation where e-levy is still in. We said we want to introduce this one. My fear, and possibly I'll get the assurance from my learned senior here, if these tolls come, are we going to cap it? Because I'm aware that the finance minister is in Parliament with the capping and realignment law, basically to amend the provisions. Are we going to add the receivables from the road tolls into the greater pool of the consolidated fund? Two, are we going to benchmark what we'll use this road tolls specifically for? Something more measurable, so that at the end of the day, we know that the amount of money that is going to be generated from the road toll possibly will be used to fix this particular road or to do A, B, C, D. Because, like again, the minority so far had demonstrated so much cooperation with this administration.
What?
Major tax policies, major tax policies by the Akufo-Addo administration. We've allowed it. If you recall, immediately post-COVID, 2021, they came out with a COVID, recovery levy. We approve of it. And many other taxes that they have come out with, consistent with our policy of ensuring that this country does not grind to a halt. We have always supported issues on tax, the tax handles that this government had brought in. We raised fundamental issues with e-levy, and Ghanaians responded with the concerns that we had. by demonstrating that they were not in support of e-levy. And that is why today, as we speak, even with the fact that e-levy had come down to 1%, in terms of how much it has accrued, it's far below what they had projected for. And so sometimes...
You just preempted my question. So e-levy has not raised what was intended.
But more than what
far more below the expectation and the projection.
Absolutely.
Even after it was reduced from 1.5 to 1.
Yes.
Still, it's not doing that much. We are in an economic crisis.
Good.
Bring the road toll back,
but you see,
get extra money to support. Why should you oppose that?
The crisis we have today has never been because of lack of revenue. In fact, the truth of the matter is that the Akufo-Addo administration...
You're going for 3 billion.
No,
it's lack of revenue.
No.
We're asking China and the rest to forgive us our debts.
Just let me demonstrate this. In the space of 6 years, the Akufo-Addo administration had obtained more tax revenue than all administrations since 1992. In fact, within 6 years, the Akufo-Addo administration had made 298 billion Ghana cedis from tax revenue minus taxes from oil. So when it comes to how much taxes are accrued, taxes or lack of it is not the reason why this economy has crashed.
Now,
far from
how do you respond to these concerns, which actually resonate with a greater number of the public by, our casual, check? You said, in fact, it's inconsistent with your promises. You said, because I'm going to bring e-levy, I'm taking away this burden. Now you are bringing it. They are asking that you take away e-levy and bring this back. Simple. And again, give assurance that the money that will be generated from the toll will be for the purpose that it has to and no other purpose.
Well, you see, the assurances is for Parliament to exact from the proponents of the reintroduction, which I believe is the Minister
of Finance.
For Finance and to some extent the Roads Ministry. And so when we get to that bridge, we'll cross it. Okay, but you see, Samson, it's important for us to situate some of these conversations in their proper context. You see, government, because of the peculiar economic situation that we find ourselves in, and the call for us to go to IMF, if you recall, in July of 2021, thereabout, there was all the way through to end of year, the finance minister indicated that, look, rather than going to the IMF, let us look within. Let's burden share. Let us see whether we can introduce some new tax handles that then allows us to pay our bills without necessarily resorting to the IMF. And so one of the policy interventions that he sought to introduce was the e-levy. You recall what happened in Parliament during the consideration and passage of the e-levy, to the extent that we breached Section 22 of the Public Financial Management Act. And that had consequences. Okay? Because the law was clear that by 31st December, you're supposed to pass your budget, approve the appropriation, and every other revenue measure that was going to implement the budget. Parliament failed to pass the revenue measures that were, or some of the revenue measures that were going to implement the 2022 budget. And the consequences is what led, obviously, to the bastardization of the levy that the government was introducing. Of course, public response then led to the performance that ultimately resulted in us going to IMF. It's all a question of revenue. How then do you raise sufficient enough revenue to then deal with the many myriad of issues that is confronting the Ghanaian people, for which they need resolution? Okay? And so at the time, the thinking was that if you were going to introduce this levy that was expected to rake in more than the road tolls were giving us, then obviously let's provide some, if you like, carrot, okay, some relief in that regard, so that we can then have some receptibility of the e-levy, so that government can generate the revenue from there to use some of it for road infrastructure. You and I know the performance of the e-levy and the exemptions that were imposed. The suggestion really was that reduce it to 1% and take away the exemptions. But the Minister of Finance, in presenting the 2023 fiscal, indicated that, well, exemptions probably may have to stay for a little longer, so we evaluate how it is that the economy performs. And so if the decision has been taken to bring it back, of course, the consultation processes have started, and I'm surprised that those of my friends who said that don't take it out. In fact, if the tape that you played, Honorable Henry Idusu, that don't take it back, don't take it away, reinstate it so that you can generate money.
That was good advice.
Yes, of course, and government has heeded. And so let's work together to ensure that it works for the benefit of all of us.
What are you giving the taxpayer?
Some of the public reactions I'm getting, including from financial, experts, is that the government behaves as if it knows it all and doesn't take advice.
I don't
That's
think
why
so.
you are here.
I don't think
and
so.
And that's why you find yourself having to embarrass yourself.
I don't think that it's an embarrassment. Okay, if you introduce a certain policy based on the work that you've done, you need to respond. People have called for review.
Reason vehemently, spoke against why it should continue to be there. And how many months along the line you are coming back and bringing it again?
Well, budget was approved. No, the 2023 fiscal of government was approved by Parliament. That included the reintroduction of the Road 2. So really, why is it becoming an issue now when Parliament, constituted by both of us,
I'm talking about the public. You see, there's a certain credibility that you need from the public, without which it's difficult to govern.
Exactly.
You say,
we will not go to IMF.
I have burdened you, I have taken this away from you. Then you are bringing it back. And now you are bringing it back with hefty amounts.
Yes.
Even though there's some applause.
I'm not sure these amounts are hefty.
There's some applause.
In any event, the Ministry of Finance has issued a statement indicating that, well, the consultation processes are just about beginning, okay? And these are only proposals that have gone to the Roads Minister. We have to go through several other layers before the final figure is put out.
Okay.
But I think that I would rather even prefer that some electronic introduction of road tolls.
Yeah, because that's the emphasis here, what the minister
precisely.
is talking about.
Yes.
Okay.
Should be the way to go.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
But Samson, is it not strange that, like on the policy credibility issue, I mean, there should be more engagement so that tomorrow we don't come to the point where we'll not go to IMF 2 days.
You see, I agree.
You need that credibility.
I agree.
You guys
I agree that we need to have a lot more consultation.
No credibility.
Whatever. See, Samson, but unfortunately, we play politics with everything. Okay? Recall when the Ministry of Finance decided to do the below-the-line reporting, okay, to exclude those extraordinary expenditures that had been incurred for the banking, energy sector, and all that. Consultations led to government putting it back in. The next day, my good friend, the now minority leader, held a press conference indicating that today debt to GDP is 103%.
Which is correct.
But was it?
It was.
Okay. See,
all right.
Because so the point is, hold on.
The IMF today had forced them to include all those
it was on your show
sustainability
that
program.
Tuna Mama indicated to you.
You're right.
That they were aware of the figures that government and that no secrecy.
No, but today he has been
hold on.
Because his own IMF,
right.
his own
I'm saying that
we included Sino Hydro and all of them.
Correct. What's the issue with Sino Hydro?
He's referring you to Tuna Mama.
No, but I'm saying that with the benefit of time, they claim he made. When the economic crashed, they now asked that we should introduce it.
So gentlemen, don't take
So at the time that he was being diplomatic.
Don't take Dr. Chuet.
He was being diplomatic.
He was being diplomatic.
And thank you very much indeed. You had such a tight schedule, and you still made it to the studio to be able to join us for this discussion. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Very much. Now, Dr. Theo Champong, the government is taking this step to bring back the toll, and it says it is to shore up domestic revenue. It comes with an upward adjustment by an average of 88.5%, including outliers of 400%. The highest percentage increase, and 33.33%, the lowest increment. The Finance Ministry has taken the proposal, the rates in a new legislative instrument to amend the Fees and Charges Miscellaneous Act 2022. So, from where you sit, is this a good decision, or we have no option, as it were?
Good decision. When the thing was actually scrapped.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. You said, it's what?
It's a good decision to reintroduce the road tolls. Everywhere in the world, people pay road tolls. So when it was scrapped, I was on this very platform to actually say it didn't make much sense to actually scrap it in the first instance. And again, it indicates what Eduji kind of was trying to highlight, the policy incoherence and inconsistency with some of the things. So bringing it back is good, one. Increasing even the toll amount, again, for me, I fully support that. The issue is we want to see what the money is being used for. And we need to make sure that these new road tolls that are being reintroduced, so it was actually never scrapped. Technically, it was zero rated. So that then gives the government opportunity to reintroduce. But we want to see that the monies are channeled into certain specific road projects and certain construction. And number two, we also want to ensure that this is not swallowed within the whole earmarking structure that the government is following. But from where I sit, I fully support the introduction or the reintroduction of the road tolls.
Right. But so what the minority is saying is not something you support. Apart from their demand for assurance, which you support, they are saying if you are bringing it back, then take away the e-levy, because you took it away so we can pay e-levy.
Oh, but Samson, my position on e-levy, you should know. I never supported it in the first place, right? But I'm also realistic to and appreciate the fact that we are in dire straits and the government badly needs revenue. So if at some point in the future, perhaps we get even more from these road tolls than probably from the road levy, maybe we might consider scrapping it or reducing the rate. But I have on record as having never supported the e-levy. Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Theo Champong, for joining us, making time to join us for this discussion. Dr. Theo Champong is economist and political risk analyst. You also heard Andrew Ejapa Mesa, is MP Secondee and Deputy Minister for Energy. Godwin Eduji Temeklo is Legal and Communications Team member of the National Democratic Congress. We will take a quick break here, and when we return, we are joined by Nana Eje Bafor Ewua, Senior Partner, Sarkodie Bafor Ewua and Partners. Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante is Director Advocacy and Policy Engagement at the Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, and Suleimana Brahima is Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. They will look at the Anas judgments. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first, as we always do. Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante with the CDD Ghana. He is in charge of Director of Advocacy and Policy Engagements. Nana Eje Bafor Ewua and Suleimana Brahima, Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for making time to join us.
Good morning, my brother. Thank you very much for having us.
Great. Okay, so let's begin with you, Nana. If you can spend about 3 minutes, 4 minutes, give your preliminary thoughts. But you could go for the jugular. What is it about this judgment? 67 pages. What is it about this judgment that gets your attention. You can try to do sort of an introduction, giving us your list of things you want to speak about and, you know, a summary of each point, and then we will come back to go deeper into them. So let's begin with you.
Good morning to your cherished listeners and then viewers. I've gone through the judgment.
Right.
And I think that the amount of work the judge did is what catches my attention. I mean, if you compare what the judge did, very respectfully, to some of the decisions of the Supreme Court on the same subject of defamation, I think that this is more thorough, with all humility, to the judges of the Apex Court. The way he set out the law, for me, is quite interesting. Trying to determine which law he should choose in determining this matter. For me, very respectfully, I think that was a bit unnecessary. That part was a bit unnecessary, but it doesn't change anything. He ended up applying the law as sanctioned by the Apex Court in as the law that governs the resolution or determination of matters of this nature. And so for me, it's the detailed work, the detailed analysis, right? That for me, you know, catches my attention with respect to what the judge has done. When you look at his evaluation of the test that governs cases of this nature, that is defamation, he seems to have given, you know, some spread by way of a dimension to even the test as sanctioned by the Apex Court. When you look at the cases of Owusu Domina, Professor Adekule, Adekulu, Abena Pokuya, Aka, and Co. If you look at all, the Supreme Court seems to have, you know, crystallized the learnings into 3 guidelines or 3 requirements that ought to be satisfied. But he seems to have broken down an aspect of it. That is, if you look at what Justice Benin wrote in Owusu Domina, he sets out 3 guidelines and says that where the word is capable of defamatory meaning, it actually means that it's defamatory. But when you read the literature on what constitutes or how to determine whether or not a particular statement or publication is capable of defamatory meaning, is the perspective of the what do you call it, the reasonable man or the right-thinking member of society. He seems to have incorporated that into another leg, or stood on that as a basis to break that particular requirement as to whether or not the word is capable of defamatory meaning, right, into whether it actually defames the person. So it is not enough that the word is capable of defamatory meaning, right, but whether or not there's a reason why it should not actually defame the person, or there's a reason why it should actually defame the person. So I think that what the judge did, Samson, when you read this judgment, I think it's a very thorough judgment. That, you know.
Okay, so you take a pause there. Yeah. You take a pause there. We'll return to you. He says that, you know, the judge sets out comprehensively what the law or the rules are that must be applied in determining a defamation suit. He has used what the Supreme Court has set out and what we already know, the 3 guidelines, you know, in determining such cases as crystallized by the Supreme Court. And he is particularly, you know, happy about his attempt to show that something may be capable of defamation, but has it actually led to defamation, or has it actually defamed? He is also interested in that as well. Well, now let me hear from Dr. Pumpuni Asante. Yes, what catches your attention in this decision?
Yeah, good morning, Samson.
Good morning.
So I think for me, what is on trial, at least in the eyes of the public, because we are all not lawyers, and most people come to this subject matter with much more broader perspectives than maybe lawyers would take it. It's not just a defamation suit. It's whether or not Anas Aremia, Anas, celebrated, investigative journalist who has risked his life in many different ways across many societies, not just in Ghana or Africa. Anas has even done cases in Asia and so on. Is in fact a blackmailer, an extortionist, a murderer, a corrupt person, a thief, and the list goes on. That this guy, this young man who has been doing this, to uncover all kinds of criminality in society, is in all this while a criminal himself. That is the big question. And this is a question that Mr. Kedijapong, since he started with the Who Watches the Watchman, video, has tried, to maintain. And then it has come, and then that was played out, for the public on many occasions to debate and discuss. But that whole debate and discussion has now been brought into the prism of a defamation suit. So we get to almost kind of relitigate this matter. But it is fundamental. I mean, for those of us who work in the governance space, who work in the anti-corruption space, this is important. We are talking about one of the foremost anti-corruption, actors in our space, not just in Ghana, but in Africa. So for me, that is the question. But the other thing on trial is Anas's method. And people call it entrapment. There's a sense of fear that if something like this is allowed to stand, then particularly Ghanaian elites cannot sleep in this country or anywhere in Africa, including presidents and so on. So because of that, what stands out, at least from a legal perspective, is the determination of facts in this case, particularly the determination of facts that lead to a pronouncement on criminal conduct. And that is where there's some very interesting determinations, which I'm sure we'll get into it. But that's for me when I look at this, and I think for most people who want to resolve this matter, this is the issue that is on the table for us to address.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Pumpuni Asante. He's also a lawyer. Now, let's hear from Suleiman Ibrahima, the non-lawyer among the lawyers, but the man who is involved through the Media Foundation for West Africa in training investigative journalists. As far as we know in this country, it is their, organization that has been involved in deliberately grooming people to become investigative journalists. And that's where Manasseh Azuri also work. So, Sule, let's hear what you think. Dr. Pumpuni Asante says this is what is on trial is whether Anas is what the MP for Asin and the judge are set in this judgment. And more importantly, whether the Anas's methods, and I know you don't like Anas's methods, is also on trial, but he's concerned about whether or not the criminal pronouncements made in the civil suits is proper in this matter. So he'll come to explain. But Sule, what what do we hear from you?
Well, thank you very much. So as you rightly say, I'm a non-lawyer, and so I look at it from the ordinary man's perspective. Of course, we are told that the law is not English, even though sometimes we read it and understand it from the perspective of, understanding the words in their ordinary sense. But at least I should understand, at least from the basic point of view, what defamation is supposed to be. If I were to take someone to court on the basis of defamation, I am saying that the person has said, uttered, or published something that undermines my reputation, my character, and in the eyes of the ordinary man on the street, portrays me in a way that, brings my reputation down. And I suppose to a large extent, that is really what this whole thing was about. And us going to court to say that this person has said a number of things, uttered a number of things, published a number of things about me, which undermines my integrity, my reputation, and in the eyes of the ordinary man, really impugns and dents who I am supposed to be. As far as I'm concerned, that fundamentally was the issue before the court. And if you look at what the court puts forward as the issues to be determined, I think it really ended at that. Now, you look at Anas's claims and what he says as plaintiff. So the person says, I'm a criminal, I'm a thief, I am an extortionist, I am a murderer. And from the ruling, the defendant admits saying all that. Says, yes, I made all those claims, but I would prove that what I said, they were true, they were justified, and they were fair. And so when I was reading it, I was following it that way. I said, oh, okay, this is going to be interesting. I'm going to see whether or not it was proven that these claims about Anas being a thief, a murderer, whatever it is, how was it proven in court? So I go on, and then of course the judge then establishes what defamation is supposed to be, what the clear defenses are, and of course as a non-lawyer, I understand, reading it. But as I go along, I got to a point, and Samson, I exclaimed to myself, hey, am I not following them? Have I read something wrong? So I went back to about 3 paragraphs up to read again. Then I told myself, no, okay, that's not it. Because I saw a clear instance of, the whole case moving beyond whether or not Anas is established, whether Kennedy Japan was able to prove that Anas is a murderer, a thief, extortionist, a bribe taker, a criminal, to the judge examining the methodology Anas uses and whether or not journalistically that is appropriate or not appropriate. And then I asked myself there, was this judge a journalist before becoming a judge? Or was he maybe an academic in the media sector before becoming? Because clearly he was trying to establish what is right, what is wrong, to the point where he then goes on to say what is being practiced is not investigative journalism, but something else. So for me, I think that the judgment or the decision by the judge went beyond probing whether what Ken said was true or not true, justifiable, fair, and whatever, to actually himself defaming the character of Anas. But of course, this was in court, and I doubt what can be done to a judge, but I believe that if this was being said on the streets, that would have amounted to another instance of defamation. But I guess we would, as time goes on, we'll get some of the issues.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much. So now, Nana, I'll come to you. And the point that you make, is it not a given that when a judge is going to give a decision on defamation or in any other case, they will set out what the principles are, what the law is. Normally, they will discuss the law and then apply it to, the testimony, the evidence, so to speak. So what is, as you put it, what is extraordinary about all those lengthy pages of, explanations as to what law must apply, what constitutes defamation, what is not defamation? What is extraordinary about that? And why should that, take our attention in examining this?
Samson, it's just to let you know that the decision was not in a vacuum. Plain and simple. It wasn't in a vacuum. It was based on the law, and that the law has a defined basis for what constitutes defamation. Defamation. And so, therefore, the decision was not in a vacuum.
Okay.
Secondly, when it comes to judgment, you and I know that it is not always that judges get it right. And so, therefore, sometimes even references to the law might be wrong. And so, if the law is set out right, we must commend a judge for doing that. Because then we know that he was going, on the basis of established principles. He was not committing an error of law, right? And so for me, I think that in that regard, he has to be commended.
Okay.
Now, what people don't, I appreciate the point that Mr. Suleimana just made. I think that I've also seen comments on social media to the effect that Anas went to a civil court and came out as a felon. And I also get that. It is because, some of our colleagues, as they rightly admitted, they are not lawyers. And so some of these things they would not understand. It is possible to make claims that have criminal connotations, right, in a civil matter. And when that is done, and when you look at the judgment, the judge analyzed that and said, page 10 of the judgment specifically, he analyzed that and said that when that is done, then the burden is one which is required in criminal matters. That is beyond reasonable doubt. The judge alluded to all those or looked at all those in his decision.
Right. So if you can hold on there, where it says he's a tax evader, does the judge show you where this is proving in the trial that Anas evades tax?
Samson, you have to go to the position of the law on what constitutes defamation to have a good appreciation of this.
No, I want us to look at this.
Wait, Samson.
No, Samson. Wait. Just a second. Let's go for the jugular, just a bit. I'm saying that you say criminal matters come in, and that's correct. You're right. We all know, we are taught that there can be pleadings about criminal, claims in a defamation suit, but in a civil suit. But whereas if it was a pure civil suit, the proof, the burden is that of preponderance of probabilities. When crime comes in, the proof is, the standard is one of proof beyond reasonable doubts. So like you mentioned from Sule, I think what Sule would need from someone like you is to understand when the judge holds that he's a tax evader, as has been said by the person he has brought to court, when he talks about he's an email hacker. For example, do you find the proof? When he says he's a murderer, do you find the proof for it? Or there shouldn't be? When he says he's a fraudster. Mm-hmm.
It's very important that in dealing with these matters, we look at what the judge said in terms of what constitutes defamation. Samson, it is not enough to say that the word is capable of defamatory meaning. But as to whether or not it actually defamed him is another thing altogether. The judge may not have considered all the things which Anas alleged that Kenneth Japan stated for which reason he deemed to be defamation. He may not have considered everything. However, the judge looked at the whole statement in its totality and reasoned that on the basis of some admissions, I've come to the following conclusions. Now, if we isolate what the judge did not say or what the judge said, we miss the point. We need to look at whether on the basis of what transpired or other things, right, would mean that Kennedy Japan has defamed Anas or not. Now, the reason why he went to court, right, all the words the judge used, words the judge used, for which some people find, or for which some of us may find unpalatable, they were not conjured by the judge. Anas himself had gone to court to say that these are statements that have been made against me by Kennedy Japan, which I find defamatory. Right? Now, Kennedy Japan comes to court and say, yes, I stated all these things.
They are true, they are justified, they are fair.
They are true, they are justified. Right? Now, the next question then will be, there will be no need for the judge to determine whether or not those statements were made against Anas.
Yeah, because he has already admitted.
They've already been admitted. And the judge said it, that once something is admitted, there's no need to prove same.
So you are saying that there's no need to establish, when he says my defense is truth, justification, which is saying is truth, there's no need to establish that when I say you are a murderer, you are in fact a murderer. When I say you are a tax evader, you are in fact a tax evader. When I say you are email hacker, you are in fact an email hacker. There's no need to prove it.
No, Samson. There's the need, there may be the need to prove it. However, the judge will first have to determine whether or not it is capable of defamation. And that is where the judge said that in the case of the late MP, J.B. Dankwa Edu.
That's right.
Right? There was somebody standing trial for the murder. So the fundamental question is whether or not, in the wake of all that, whether the right-thinking member of society will think that Anas actually killed J.B. Dankwa Edu. So the judge analyzed all those things. That somebody has been arrested, somebody is standing trial for the murder of J.B. Dankwa Edu, right? And then Kennedy Japan has said he killed J.B. Dankwa Edu. In court, Kennedy Japan said no, because he had said I killed Ahmed Swale. I also said he killed J.B. Dankwa Edu. So in court, Kennedy Japan did not say that the statement that Anas killed J.B. Dankwa Edu was true. He only said that, yes, I also said that because he had made a similar allegation of murder against me. At that point, Kennedy Japan didn't have to prove the truth of that statement. The question is whether or not, in the circumstance of it, right, will the ordinary, the right-thinking member of society come to the conclusion that indeed Kennedy Japan meant, or actually meant, that J.B. Dankwa Edu was killed by Anas. For
question. After the judge speaks, the judgment speaks about that, you know, a criminal, murderer, evil person, thief, a cheat, fraudster, extortionist, blackmailer, corrupt, land grabber, tax evader, bribe taker, giver, interferer in administration of justice, terrorizes people, email hacker, among others. Then it says, the failure of the defendants, that is the MP, to plead and provide evidence on those matters only meant that the words were admitted by him sub silentio, as in he's silent about it. He doesn't need to actually say that, you know,
that's right,
one thing or the other, but I have admitted them by not saying anything. Then he says, he has admitted them this way as having been uttered by him, that they were uttered in reference to Anas, and that they were published. Then he says the point that you make about what the judge said about it. the judgment says, as already mentioned above, it is the burden of the judge as a trier of fact to determine whether the words actually defame the plaintiff using the hypothetical reader test. And then he comes to say, I have concluded aforehand, based on exhibit so and so and so, that the plaintiff, Anas, engaged in the crime of bribe taking and bribe giving. A person who commits a crime is a criminal, simpliciter. However, since every word uttered in a different occasion, on a different occasion, ought to be assessed for their defamatory effect, I'll assess all alleged words to determine if they succeed in actually defaming the plaintiff. Then here is the point you are making. He says, on the allegation that plaintiff murdered former member of parliament, Joseph Boachi Dankwa Edu, is consorting with his wife and was responsible for the killing of some Chinese. Defendant explained under cross-examination that he said so because plaintiff had alleged that he killed his colleague, Ahmed Swale. The hypothetical reader would have read about the notorious case involving the murder of the former member of parliament, Mr. Boachi Dankwa, and would be aware of the trial of the suspects, which excludes Anas, the plaintiff. The allegation made by the defendant could not therefore succeed in actually defaming the plaintiff. This is what you say, that should end it.
In my humble opinion, you see, the judge did not make the statement in a vacuum. Samson, he based it on the evidence, exhibit KA01, KA02, KA03, and KA04.
Stay with the issue of murder. Is there an exhibit about murder?
Samson, if you limit, you need
no,
to
I want us to isolate them because this is an important part of it. You have referred to exhibit. When it comes to the murder, do you see an exhibit about murder? I mean, let's just deal with this first.
Samson,
and then.
Did the judge make a finding of Kenneth Japan having justified the murder based on the exhibit? He didn't.
Okay.
He said that. Samson, he didn't. He said that when you look at the allegation of murder, one Kenneth Japan had said that he had said so in rebuttal to a certain allegation. That's the first point. The second point the judge made was that the trial of J.B. Dankwa's murder, the accused person, right, for J.B. Dankwa's murder was ongoing.
That's right.
And so therefore, the reasonable man or the right-thinking member of society who knows that there is police, the police has investigated the matter. 3, the police has somebody who has been charged for the murder.
Right.
4, that person is standing trial for the murder.
Correct.
5, whether or not in that circumstance, right, the right-thinking member of society is likely to say that what Kenneth Japan is saying is true or not. At that point, the judge concludes that on the basis of these facts, right, the right-thinking member of society is likely to come to a different conclusion.
Okay, so the question now is, the question now is this: what do you say to members of the public? And this has become an important part, as you have seen being discussed in the public. As a lawyer, bring your experience to bear to help them appreciate. What members of the public are saying is that this is illogical. They are saying that if the man says what I said was true and is justified, and you have found that, in fact, there is somebody standing trial, and that person standing trial is not an ass, then it means it is not true what he said about him. If it is not true, what should happen? What will you say to those who are saying differently?
So what I'll say to those who are looking at it from a different perspective is that, yes, words may be capable, words may be capable of defamatory meaning. Not every word which is capable of defamation actually defames. And it is so because the circumstances, right, that surround it may cause a right-thinking member of society to think otherwise, even though somebody may have stated so, right? And so the fact that Kenneth Japan may have called Anas murderer doesn't necessarily mean that everybody will believe it. And as the judge explained, because of the circumstances, the right-thinking member of society may not believe it.
The right-thinking member of society will say that that allegation is not true.
Yes, because the right-thinking member
if it is not true, if it is not true, then it's not justified. It's not fair. You know,
then it means it is. Then it means it is not defamatory, because it does not actually defame. And that's why I said to you, look, when you look at all the literature on defamation, Samson, when they are looking at the right-thinking member of society, they are not just looking at you or I. Right. Or Mr. Suleiman. They are looking at people who are capable of
so Nana, thank you for that. Thank you for that. I'm bringing this in. Wait, just a second, because you know we are dealing with time and we have to be careful. Now, in the same vein, we'll come back to particularly Exhibit KA01, which is actually the main thing that the trial is hinged on. Yes. The issue of, because I sit here and I have to reflect what the public is making. Then we'll come to the end, whether it is justified, how some are using this to want to say that they don't have trust in the judiciary, if it is fair at all. Like Manasseh says, it's not at all. When he says he's an email hacker, when the judge, the person accuses somebody is an email hacker, he is, what do you call it, tax evader, he's a land grabber. You are saying in the same way, there's no need to prove that as being true, even though the defendant says it is true. Yes, Nana. I can't hear Nana. Hello? I don't know what's going on. Okay, so whilst we try to get Nana back, Dr. Santi, hello? Hello, Dr. Santi. I can't hear Dr. Santi too. Hello?
Hello.
Good.
Okay.
So on that issue of the murder and the examples I'm giving, tax evader, email hacker, land grabber, from your reading, what do you say to the criticism from the public?
So, yeah, thank you very much, Samson. And, you know, this particular issue for me is important, and I take cognizance of the fact that Anas and his lawyers have released a statement that they are going on appeal. So, again, it's not to litigate these matters on radio, but I think because this is so central, and my premise or my preamble, you know, to this discussion was that, you know, from a governance perspective, from an anti-corruption perspective, this is an important, this conviction in a civil trial is important because it's a court of records, right? What the judge is determining as fact is important for whether the public can walk away from this judgment and say, we know as a fact that Anas is a blackmailer, he's a thief, you know, he's a murderer, all those things that have been said. And I start from the judge's own sort of setting out the legal tests that have to be applied when you are making a determination on criminal conduct within a civil trial, where he says, where a party alleges the commission of a crime by the other in a civil suit, the standard of proof is the same as the criminal case, a proof beyond reasonable doubt. But then he makes a further statement that in a criminal case, the rule has crystallized into a voluntary confession. I think section 120 evidence, where he's talking, where basically in a civil suit, the way in which you determine whether that criminal conduct has been, you know, has been proven, is that if the person makes a confession, then basically that is enough, right, for you to say the standard have been met. So he lays this out. And then in his determination, as you say, so that the first piece of evidence in this KA1 exhibit is whether to determine whether or not Anas is the person in the video or not. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you, Doc. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Doc, I was hoping that we could distill this in a certain fashion so that so that our audience can follow us.
Sure.
You see, when it comes to the video,
yes,
which is exhibit KOA1,
yes,
that is, we can deal with that.
Sure.
I'm talking about where the court refers to a question of murder, for example, and gives you why that should not, be an issue for him to prove anything. And
but that would be contradictory to the legal test that the judge himself set out, which I've just read to you. That where you allege the commission of a crime, that it has to be proven on the standard of beyond reasonable doubt, or a self-confession. Now, the evidence that the judge relied on in this case, there was no self-confession, and there was no evidence led to prove that this has happened. And as you said, there are many things that have been said, including the murder, the tax evasion, the killing of Chinese people, all of these things, where there was no evidence provided. Now, if the suggestion is that in a defamation case, if you call me a thief and I call you an armed robber, then basically we strike each other out. Because that's in the reading of the judge, it sounds like that's what the judge is saying. That it's not defamatory because we basically call each other names.
Yes, but in law, in the heat of anger, in defamation, in the heat of anger, when you exchange words, vituperation could be said to not be defamatory.
But this the defendant has admitted that he basically is setting out to prove these things that he has said it. Of course, in the murder case, for instance, in the one that he's talking about, Jamie Dankwa, he says, well, I also called him a murderer because of that. But it doesn't extend to whether that also means that the Chinese people that he supposedly had killed is also related to that same matter, or whether he doesn't even mention the tax evasion or any of these things. So I think that's why, for me, as I said, the judge's effort to determine facts in this case is quite interesting, because it raises so many red flags in my mind, because it's not consistent with even the way he's laid out the law itself. So at least on that matter, for me, I feel that the job was not done. I mean, I don't see how you kind of move from the legal test, because this is still criminal conduct that you're talking about. Remember that in the determination that he's made, anyway, and we'll come to KO1, he has convicted other people apart from Anas.
Okay, so hold on. We are going there, so don't go there.
To that.
Yeah,
we'll come to that.
Yeah, so Doc, hold on there. Let me go to Sule now. Sule, you brought this up about, you said, failure to prove his defenses. I mean, largely that's what you said. Your reading of what happened appears to suggest to you. So on this leg, what's your appreciation? And you have listened to first Bafo. These are lawyers. You have listened to Kojo Asante. You are no lawyer. How do what they say help you appreciate what you find difficult to believe, just as some members of the public are using and saying this, particularly the analogy about the murder thing, the land grabbing analogy too, that there was a judgment already which was in favor of Anas, but which judgment was quashed by the Supreme Court and so on. Yes, let's hear you.
Well, I think listening to Bafo raises a lot of curiosity for me as a non-lawyer, because at some point it sounds as though if you were to say certain things damaging about an individual, yes, it could be established as damaging words that undermine the reputation of that individual, but may not be defamatory. The second point is, well, if you say 10 things that are, negative, damaging about an individual, then you go to court and you are able to prove 1, 2, or 3 of them, the judge could then say, well, on the basis of this 1, 2, 3, even though I have not been able to provide defenses for the others, I don't think that those ones could be defamatory. The other point is that to say that because somebody is on trial, it could then be concluded that even if the person made words or said things that undermine or impugn the reputation of someone, given that somebody is in court and on trial for that same offense, the person could be exonerated. In other words, if somebody is on trial for a particular offense, I can then accuse Dr. Kojo Asante as an offender in that same thing, and then when it goes to court, I need to just basically point the judge to the fact that, oh, somebody else is on trial for that offense, and it is because Dr. Asante had accused me of a certain crime. That is why I also made that claim or defamatory statement about him. It also sounds to me as though it's okay to make defamatory statements against an individual, and then when you are sued before the judge, you offer an explanation as to why those things were said. Oh, he stole my plantain, that is why I also stole his plantain. Or he called me a thief, and that is why I also called him a thief. And then, given that somebody is on trial for that, then it's okay. I find it quite curious. And when the reference is continually made about the ordinary man on the street, right-thinking people on the street, I wonder who those right-thinking people on the street would be, because I consider myself to be one of them. I am not a lawyer. I consider myself as somebody who is interested in this. And when Ken says Anas is a murderer, killed JB Dankwa and is consulting with the wife, in my view, I was looking for, is it true or is not true? Okay, this matter is before court. I'm looking forward to whether it will be proven that Anas indeed had a hand in the murder of JB Dankwa, and whether or not indeed he's having an affair.
JB Dankwa and Chinese.
Yes, JB Dankwa and Chinese. I'm looking forward to evidence to that effect. And to say that, well, there were no defenses to that, but on the basis of other things, the defendant, wasn't deemed.
Don't you think that on the basis we can move to KOA1 now, which I will start from with Nana Bafo, but you don't you think, for example, that since the judge has seen what he has seen in the footage, which he takes as fact because he's exercising it, and okay, so this is not funny, but I told a client once many years ago that when we are going to the court, the judge doesn't know the truth. It is you and your other side who know the truth, or God who knows the truth. The judge will only determine what he has to determine on the basis of what you say and what the other person say, and the evidences that you bring. What he comes to may coincide with the truth, but the court doesn't know the truth. Now, he has seen a video and there are things in there. Is he not entitled to say, by this video that I have seen, that you are promising to give a bribe, that you have already given a bribe. If somebody says you are a tax evader, email hacker, or whatever you are, I should use that basis to believe that these things you are capable of them and therefore you are not defamed. Doesn't it apply somewhat? Sule, your basic thinking doesn't work?
Not at all, because Samson, you see, the very, very last paragraph of the ruling, the judge says, I state in conclusion that whereas all the statements founded on exhibits KO01, KO02, KOA3, and KO04 were truthful and factual, thereby sustaining defendant's defense of justification and fair comment, the statements in Plaintiff's Exhibit C, though capable of defamatory meanings, were not proven to have actually defamed the plaintiff. I found the claims of plaintiff meritless, and I hereby dismiss them. So, in conclusion, it was on the evidence of the contents of for easy, pronunciation, KOA 1, 2, 3, and 4. And as you said earlier, these materials did not contain anything about somebody being a hacker, somebody being a murderer, somebody being a killer, somebody being a tax evader, and so on and so forth. So if the holistic conclusion was based on the content of KOA 1, 2, 3, and 4, then on what basis were those other ones not deemed to have been defamatory?
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Now let me go to Nana now. And interesting things. Dr. Asante, I know, and we'll come to you because you guys as CDD are looking at policy questions, and that's the major reason you are on the show this morning. But Nana Bafo, Nana J. Bafo, why am I always trying to mix it? Nana J. Bafo Ewa. Now, can we go to the exhibit you referred to, and then on that basis, explain to those who share a different view and want to fault the judgment, and you seem to want to say, there are questions of trust with the court. Can you use that to explain?
Okay. For me, Exhibit KO1 is the most important evidence in this whole trial.
That's right.
Is the most important evidence in this whole trial because it relates to Anas's professional work as we have come to know him. And all the allegations of murder, tax evasion, and all those things, for me, in my humble opinion, if Anas was not an investigative journalist of the magnitude that we have seen in this country, it wouldn't have been important to me. Exhibit KO1 concerns the credibility of Anas's work, his integrity as an investigative journalist. And I thought that is what would take center stage, right? You and I know that Samson, judges in their line of work, right, have the right to have it right and also have the right to have it wrong. That is why there is an internal curative system, that is the Appellate system, for correcting the rights or wrongs of judges.
That's right.
And all those issues, in my humble opinion, are very insignificant. For me, KO1 is very fundamental.
It is.
From the judgment, and the name of the game, as you know in trial, is evidence. Evidence evaluation is judged or determined by the Evidence Act. There are rules to it. And so therefore, you cannot simply go to court and say that a particular exhibit which somebody has tendered, that exhibit is merely doctored. Something merely doctored.
So Nana, let me read what the summary of sometimes you see KA01, sometimes you see KOA1. So let's, I'm referring from the certified copy of the judgment. So it refers to it as Exhibit KA01. And it says, Counsel for plaintiff sought to explain away the apparent meaning, scope, and effect of the recording in Exhibit KOA1 concerning the plaintiff. According to him, Exhibit KOA1 comprises 2 videos made by the plaintiff, that's Anas, and his Tiger Eye PI team in 2009. The first part concerns a conversation pursuant to a contract by one Zachary L. Venegas between the Anas and the suspects in the $1.9 million gold scam case. The strategy of Anas, he claimed, was to engage in a free and open conversation with the criminals so they come out with all implicating facts that could then be used against them. The second part of the video involved a meeting between Anas. When I see plaintiff, I put Anas just for the purpose of easy appreciation by our viewers. That's the second video, involved a meeting between Anas's team and the prosecutor to narrate their investigations and engage in a pre-trial preparation for the trial. According to counsel for the MP and his team, put the 2 audiovisuals together, edited, patched up, and superimposed same with ill-faith commentaries. To buttress his submission, he referred to the prosecution proceedings of the trial, admitted as Exhibit F series, which proves that Anas was attending court and duly testified to assist in the successful prosecution of the accused persons, contrary to the claims of the defendant. He also referred to Exhibit E and F, by which as a result of a communication between Anas's counsel and the Attorney General, it was made clear that nothing in the records of the trial indicates that Anas could have colluded with the prosecutor to botch the trial. I don't know if I read the correct portion, but it gives you an idea of what is involved in that exhibit, where in that video, which is Who Watches the Watchman, played by the defendant on his TV station, in taking it as it is, Anas, somebody said to be Anas, the court believes that is Anas, is heard actually saying that he has paid bribes to the CID and he has paid bribe to the prosecutor, and he took about $100,000 US, out of which he was making these payments and so on. Yes, Nana, now you can continue.
Now, Samson, one key fact about Exhibit KO1, as you have rightly described, is that Anas's lawyers never disputed the fact that Exhibit KO1, being the video recording of what the judge considered to be confession of bribe taken, right, by Anas, was never denied. They never denied the fact that they generated that video. It was never denied.
Were they right to demand that it should not be patched up videos with jumps in it, but it should be the raw footage before you can admit it, because it's not authentic and original?
The fundamental issue when it comes to admissibility, it comes to admissibility is whether or not it is relevant to the matter at hand.
That's right.
Once it is relevant, it is admitted by the court.
They are arguing that when the state is using Anas for trials, when the state is using Anas to help them to prosecute people he has found to have done wrong, always the court demands the raw footage, not just the few minutes that have been pieced together. And they are saying that somebody has doctored. So where you hear Anas, quote unquote, the person said to be Anas, saying that I took this money and I gave this person so amount, it is possible that that was somebody else superimposing a voice.
Very respectfully, I appreciate all those facts. So if you allow me, will be of more help to your listeners and viewers. They never denied as a fundamental point that that video was put together by Anas. So then it goes into evidence, right? Now, what do you do as a lawyer who has had such a key evidence admitted, right, into the record of the court? Because don't forget, once the evidence is admitted on record, the court has no choice but to evaluate it. The next level then is, what weight is the court going to attribute to such evidence? Is the court going to say that merely because you say it is doctored, I shouldn't give it weight? No. You should do more as a lawyer. If you say it's been doctored, why do you say it is doctored? Have you produced a forensic evidence before the court that confirms that it's been doctored? No. All you said was that it is doctored. But the fact remains that you generated that video. And so where is the original? The original is in your custody. The original too you did not produce. What do you want the court to do?
Okay, so Nana, that point to
please,
wait. Just hold on. Okay. We don't have time. I'm moderating it. In the next 2 minutes, I'll let some other people speak. But here's the point. They say that if you say we have to go and bring the raw footage, it's wrong. Because the one who has brought it, it's his duty to bring the raw footage, not piece footage. And they also say that, why is it that the person who is speaking, the voice that is speaking, they challenge you that it is not Anas. And nobody has been able to say that that is Anas. Anas's witnesses are asked, is that Anas speaking? They say no. So how do you come to the conclusion that that is Anas when you have not seen Anas yourself?
Samson, in the courtroom, it is not conjecture. It is evidence. It's on the preponderance of probabilities. Once I produce evidence, I've discharged my burden. Evidence that has been admitted, I've discharged my burden. The burden is now on you to produce a contrary evidence and not merely shout that this is doctored. Anybody at all can go to court and say this is doctored. If you say it is not Anas, where is Anas? The judge, from the onset of his analysis of the evidence, said that at all material times, processes that Anas's team had filed admitted to the fact that Anas was the one on the video. Now you go into the witness box and you say that Anas is not the one on the video. Clearly, you suffer credibility deficit, a huge one from the outset. Now you want to say that the court should take it that because of your mere shouting that it is doctored. No, that is not how we conduct trials, right? Trial is a very serious business. If you say that it is not you, produce contrary evidence, especially since it was not just an oral testimony. This is material evidence, video. You have to produce something. Otherwise, if the court will prefer, that is the position of the law, unless there is something contrary on record, the court will prefer that to your oral evidence. And so the judge was right.
Right. And then they what they have put in the public also include a 5th of July 2021 record of proceedings in which they attempted to, as it were, put in evidence that suggests that the video is discredited. And that evidence, documentary, was rejected and marked as R. They say that shows you that there was an unfair process, that we are trying to question the credibility of this, and it's said to be brought by a certain Salis newspaper, and we have evidence from their side to do, and then you reject that evidence. What do you say about that?
Samson, you know the rules that govern admissibility, right? The judge did not state why at that point he didn't admit it in the judgment. So we are not able to comment on the reason behind the admissibility, the rejection of that evidence, right? But Samson, when you look at all that transpired, okay, the judge did say that, or did capture in his evidence, a dialogue between Anas and the prosecutor, where they were talking about bribe given and bribe taken. What do you want the judge to do at this point? What conclusion do you want the judge to come to? Secondly, the other video where Anas was in conversation with Mubarak and Tunde, where they discussed the possibility of exchanging money so that they will not be included in the prosecution, right? It turns out that Tunde and Mubarak were excluded from the prosecution. Samson, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, right? And cries, it quacks like a duck, then it is a duck.
Okay.
Why?
Thank you. We have very limited time left. Sorry, hold on there for me. Now, Sule, I'll get you to come in briefly. Then I go to Kojo the lawyer, and bigger issues of policy that he also wants to raise. What do you make of that portion when you read through it? What do you make of it? Particularly their claim that this is pieced together and the voices appear to jump and it's very clear. So what you would do is have the full footage and not this piecemeal. Yes, Sule. Have I lost Sule?
Can you hear me, Samson?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yes. So I read about that contention in the ruling, and the judge rather says that if the claimant or the plaintiff is saying that it was a doctored video and couldn't also then submit the original, then it is difficult for that to be accepted. But like you said, in all trials and cases involving Anas, there's always been the point about we need the original. And in this case, therefore, one would have been expecting that the judge would have then said, okay, unless the judge says, no, I don't take it to be doctored, or the evidence adduced to make the point that it is doctored wasn't adequate enough, then the judge would have said, okay, we need the original version of this to be able to authenticate whether indeed this is pieced together or not. But for me, the whole thing is quite curious. And one cannot but say, can we take this matter a step further? Because really, as I said from the beginning, it moves beyond the whole question of establishing defamation, getting into issues of criminal conduct and all of that, journalistic methodologies, and it certainly would have a significant implication on journalism in this country. For example, the judge, in the matter of J.B. Danko Edu, the judge simply makes references to the fact that somebody is on trial. The question is, has the person been proven guilty? Tomorrow, assuming tomorrow, that guy who is on trial is said to be innocent and not involved in that. Wouldn't the right-thinking people on the street then think that, okay, then, as it was alleged, then it must be Anas who did this? So there are a lot of questions in relation to this ruling, and I'm happy that I'm here to speak to Anas about it. I'm hearing that they are thinking of filing an appeal, and I think that would be the right thing to do.
So you say from where you sit, your concern is that this will have an impact on investigative journalists, and you are training investigative journalists.
Absolutely, yes. We have debates and we have questions about the matters, but just like this decision, we are debating it, and that is how we improve a profession. If we are all to say, okay, this is the way to go, then certainly I don't think that we would have a development in the particular profession. Okay. It is right to debate, to argue about theories, to argue about matters, and that is how we evolve, change things, amend things, and so on. I cannot say I am right.
All right.
I cannot say this is right. Okay. But to now make this ruling on defamation.
Okay, so let's go to Prof. Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante. Doc, let's hear you on this and the questions of policy and journalism in general that you are concerned about.
Samson, for me, and I think from the beginning, what concerns me is really the criminal conviction. and the treatment of facts by the judge. And everybody is right in the sense that the whole decision, even on the defamation, is hinged on this KOA1 video. And the KOA1 video starts, first of all, with the question about whether Anas is in the video, Anas is not in the video. And in the judge's discussion, he says, well, in the cross-examination of Anas's lawyers, at one point they said Anas is not the one in the video, but at another point they said Anas was the one being referred to. I didn't understand why the judge found a confusion with that. Of course, the video, it shows a picture of Anas. They keep inserting a picture of Anas, and there's a commentary that says this is Anas. So it's Anas being referred to, but they are right in saying that Anas is not in the one in the video. How that resolution leads to in the court's judgment, a deliberate attempt to mislead the court by this so-called contradiction. Now that then moves to say that any activity in the video involves Anas. So Anas is meeting with people to plot this. Anas is meeting with a prosecutor. So for me, we are talking about a criminal conviction, which is supposed to be a standard of proof that is beyond reasonable doubt. If this is how the treatment is done to arrive at a certainty that a video that the defendant brought, that he says it came from Silas newspaper. So by that understanding, Silas newspaper has the original. The person doesn't produce the original, produce what they have pieced together. And on that basis, you say, well, it's the plaintiff that has to bring the original. So there is a lot of contention around the evidence that is used to convict in this manner. And I feel that if you are going to because this is a serious, for me, by this, you have convicted Anas of a serious crime, a number of crimes. You have convicted the former CID, Director General of the CID, Mr. Dupoku. You have convicted the lawyer, Mr. Kokume, right, by judicial record through this analysis of facts. And I find that there's no way in my humble estimation that you can treat a criminal process like this in this way. So I find a lot of problems with it. So on the policy side, as I've said, there are issues that are raised about analysis methods and so on and so forth. And the debate goes on. I have always erred on the caution that a lot of the things we experience in Ghana and Africa, and it's not just across the world, that there are many issues around corruption that you have to use subterfuge to get to the matter. And often when it happens, it will lead to an investigation, a substantive investigation, like in the FIFA case.
Okay.
It led to a substantive investigation, and then it helps society to address these problems in society.
All right. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, this is all time will allow us, but as we understand, Anas has issued a statement and says that he intends to appeal the decision for a number of reasons. Let's see how that goes, because that is actually what should happen. If you disagree with the judgment of the court, you should go on appeal. I wanted us to discuss the other aspect about people making the commentary and trying to, like Manasseh put it in what I read to you, that there is lack of trust in the judiciary. But I'm sure that the explanations that the lawyers and all of these have brought in helps you to be able to take a decision based on this and make it independent of the entire judicial system. But I'm sure that we may have to discuss further this matters going forward. My outfit, as always, is by Habil Scooter. You can find them at Ajiringano Gate, East Legon. You can call them on 0200 84 1988. This has been Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And my guest for the final segment have been Suleiman Ibrahima of the Media Foundation for West Africa. Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante of CDD Ghana, and Nana J. Bafo Ewa, Senior Partner, Sarkodie Bafo Ewa, and Partners. I'm Samson, Lardy, Anyenini, and I invite you tomorrow afternoon, Sunday, on this same network. Join my guest, Dennis Ejay Jumo and Hanifa Ajoayaya, to discuss invalid Islamic marriages. The Registrar General says that 80% of the marriages conducted in Islam are invalid. What are the consequences, including property disputes, coming forward? Have a good afternoon.